Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. Today is Tuesday, May 21st, 2024, although we are recording this on Monday, May 20th, 2024. I say this, as I said yesterday, because we will sometimes get the days confused as we're speaking. Just understand that we are taping this on a Monday, though we are going to hear it on a Tuesday. So forgive us if you get a little confused when we say today, or if we say today, we're probably going to mean yesterday. If that makes any sense to you, we're going to be talking about some temporal confusions, by the way, on this podcast itself, as you'll hear when after I introduce my co-hosts here, executive editor Abe Greenwald. Hi, Abe.
Hi, John.
Senior editor Seth Mandel. Hi, Seth.
Hi, John.
And media commentary columnist Christine Rosen. Hi, Christine.
Hi, John.
Look, tragically, men died in a helicopter crash in Azerbaijan. I say tragically, ironically, it was not tragic. It was rough justice. I thought that it was likely that the Israelis were somehow involved. It's now clear the Israelis weren't involved, as the Iranians are not saying the Israelis were involved. The Israelis say we were not involved. And Iran, in a great moment of hilarious pathos, former Foreign Minister Zarif said that the helicopter crash, due to the American sanctions, that meant that the helicopters are improperly kept up in Iran because the sanctions, I guess, won't allow them to get parts. Okay.
I made that point. Now I have to work this, figure out the time thing yesterday.
Yes, you did.
You did. And you're right that because American sanctions they have 1970s helicopters, they're not keeping them up. Why they flew? Right,
they should have just blamed Boeing
or like why they didn't fly him in a plane. I don't understand. Who the hell knows what is going on? I don't care. He's dead. He deserves to be dead. He should have been dead years ago. And if he were dead tomorrow, I would dance as happily as I am dancing today at his death. He hates Jews. He hates America. He killed Americans. He is part of a regime that sent 300 missiles, as I said yesterday, at the Jewish state, wanting to kill my sister, my two nephews, my niece, and my four great and grand nieces and nephews. So he's dead, and thank God he's dead. And by the way, it may not have been the state of Israel that took him out. Maybe it was the God of Israel that took him out for his role in trying to obliterate the Jewish state with those missiles. Just put that in your pipe.
Our God is the Old Testament God.
He's a smiter. It's a lot of smiting.
He smites. He smites. By the way, and he smites Jews and he smites non-Jews. So don't think that this is some kind of special dispensation to smite non-Jews. There are plenty of Jews that get smitten or smited or whatever in the Bible, and so we'll go with that. But
I think it's smote. Yeah,
smote. Really? Okay.
I think it's smote.
We'll go with smote. Okay, so but he is dead, and you know that the world has gone haywire when we have a conversation just before we go to air, and I'm like, I know everyone's upset because people are expressing condolences for his death, but I'm inclined to give the diplomats a pass. And Christine, literally, we're on a Zoom, could have stretched her arms through the screen like in Videodrome and strangled me.
And I'm mild-mannered usually, so
you are, yes. So Christine, we have. Let's just go through this. We had expressions of condolence, official expressions of condolence from the State Department in a statement.
Yes.
We had expressions of condolence on the floor of the UN General Assembly.
Yes.
Asking for a moment of silence, to which the deputy UN ambassador stood, expressing condolence, and we had the bizarre appearance of the Senate chaplain.
Yes.
Wishing a Godspeed and happy journey to a more wonderful future to the dead Iranians.
He was perhaps the worst of the bunch because you also for NATO expressed condolences and a White House spokesman expressed condolences, but the Senate chaplain said, "Lord," he prayed. He said, "Lord, we pray for the Iranian people who mourn the death of their president." Well, you can pray for the Iranian people, but many Iranians were not mourning the death of this president. In fact, there's plenty of social media accounts that showed a lot of celebration on the part of the Iranian people for the death of the Butcher of Tehran. So I was
we pray for the Iranian people when the Iranian regime, when their facial recognition technology is used to scan social media. Those are the Iranian people that we pray.
Yeah. Well, on Twitter, I said something like, "It's like praying for the Romanian people at the death of Mr. and Mrs. Ceausescu,
exactly,
after they urinated on their corpses." Which is what happened to Mrs. and Mrs. Ceausescu after their regime of terror was ended in the wake of the fall of the Iron Curtain. Okay, but as I'm saying, well, okay. So my devil's advocate is, look, they died. It was an accident. Do you want them saying, "Thank God Americans are dead"? So maybe
they say that all the time.
Okay, go at me. Give it to me. Come on.
Well, this is the thing. I do think that, it's one thing. I actually would grant a little more leeway to NATO and the UN folks, because there is a sort of international protocol there when a leader dies. But why our State Department and why our White House needs to be expressing any form of condolence for the death of this man who killed Americans is beyond me. That seems, you could say he died. Like, if you feel like you need to make a statement, and we have, hopes for better leadership for the Iranian people, there's lots of stuff you could say. But the choice of how they were saying it, just as I think all the obituary writers for the Washington Post and the New York Times were in this pickle again of like, do we call him a religious scholar? What do we say that doesn't sound too mean? It's ridiculous. They should be honest and speak the plain truth about this horrible human being.
Yeah, and I got to say, at the UN, it would have been an extraordinarily heroic moment, a really triumphant moment for any American administration to sit when they stand for a moment of solemn silence for this guy who is, by any reasonable account, just a monster. It would have been a great bold moment. And by the way, look, I can't. It's a counterfactual. Would Nikki Haley have stood? I don't think so. I genuinely don't think so. And it seems shocking because it's a breach of protocol. But the second it would be done, it wouldn't be shocking. It would be so obviously right and just that it would be really a powerful statement. Yeah.
And there are times when breaching protocol is the statement itself.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially if you're talking about an organization that is, what's the protocol for the UN? Well, to sort of get enmeshed with Hamas. So, who cares about protocol? Yeah.
Also, I would pull the Ronald Reagan card. I paid for this microphone. The UN doesn't like what they do in Turtle Bay. They can go somewhere else. That's the other thing, is that there's a certain, they rely on us for everything, including location. And it's like, I'm sitting in my house. This is my house. I paid for this microphone. I want to sit. There's that like swagger that the U.S. never throws around, which I suggested they should do earlier when UNRWA employees were found to have taken part in October 7th and all this other stuff. There's all sorts of stuff in the contract that the U.S. can do to sort of throw its weight around, can void parts of the, there are these agreements that like the NYPD or federal agents are like vampires. They have to be invited inside UN headquarters or something like that. Like, there's all this stuff that we just sort of give them away, and they use it to just throw everything back in our face, to sit there, at the seats that, and insult us and all that other stuff. So I don't think I'm generally a protocol guy, but I also kind of wish that there were times that we just did things at the UN just simply to point out and remind everybody how much this whole system relies on our money and our real estate.
Look, I totally agree with you. And I wish that we use the UN performatively, as the UN is itself a performative institution, and therefore deserves no better. But of course, we are not in charge of the American foreign policy establishment at this moment, and they still don't not like the UN. That's the problem. Like, they haven't realized that the UN is a or they cannot because of the complex doctrine governing the Democratic Party's relation to international institutions. They do not understand that the UN is a source of evil, and therefore they're not going to use it the way that it should be. It should be used, which brings me to another international organization, the International Criminal Court, which you may think is one of those post-war institutions created in the wake of the Second World War to establish proper behavior among nations after the horrors of the two wars that had destroyed so much of civilization and needed to be put back together. Nuh-uh. The International Criminal Court dates back exactly 22 years, and its establishment by God knows who and God knows what way. There is a way, but you can look it up yourself. I'm not going to go through it. Neither the United States nor Israel is a signatory or an observer or a believer or an acceptor of the viability or the legality of the International Criminal Court. So when today we are informed, yesterday, or perhaps today, I'm not quite sure which you want to say, we are informed that prosecutors at the International Criminal Court having made the case against Israel as a committer of war crimes during the war in Gaza, or war crimes in general, that the prosecutors have recommended that war crimes charges be brought against Yahya Sinwar and the political director of Hamas, whose name has now literally fled from my head, but it'll come to me in a minute, and Bibi Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, the Minister of Defense, that all four of them should be prosecuted, should be convicted or found guilty of war crimes, and therefore be subject to international arrest, at their travel. I agree with the idea that Yahya Sinwar and the head of Hamas should be subject to international arrest or international bullets shot through their bodies 5,000 times like Sonny at the Causeway. Whichever comes first would be fine with me. However, Israel is not a signatory to the International Criminal Court, and it is not subject to its decisions. And there was this telling bit of language in the prosecutor's statement, which he said that Israel was described as it was the territory of Israel and the state of Palestine. So Bibi and Gallant represent the territory of Israel, whereas Sinwar and someone looked this up for me. Help me out. I can't remember what his name was.
Haniyeh, no? Was
yeah,
Ismail
of course.
Haniyeh is the other guy? Oh.
Yeah, Ismail Haniyeh.
And
right, okay.
Then there was a third, but...
okay, there's a third. Anyway, so the whole thing, once again, is an act of, it's performance art, because the purpose of this document was not to announce, by the way, that they had been found guilty of war crimes and were there. It was to announce that they were recommending that they be found guilty,
as they
of
have done
crimes.
for the U.S. in Afghanistan. They're investigating war crimes supposedly committed by the U.S. in Afghanistan too. So.
Yes, and so the point that the key thing here is that the reason to do this was to issue a document that is somehow legally a important legal document that declares Israel a territory and Palestine a state. Like, let's be Straussian about this. What's important about this? Nothing changed from Sunday to Monday to Tuesday in regards to this matter. The prosecutors had already made the argument that Israel should be subject to, should be found guilty of war crimes. It was that a document was being issued by an international body describing Israel as something not a country, but Palestine as a country. That's my interpretation. Maybe I'm being too cutesy or too Straussian. But when I look at something and I see what's new in it, I say, well, what's new in it is the news and what's important about it. And that is a novel thing. I've never literally in my 40 years or 50 years of paying attention to this, I've ever seen anyone describe Israel as a territory. I've seen it described as a rogue state. I've seen it described as a genocidal state, an apartheid state, a this, or that. but never as a territory,
entity.
which is, of course, what
an entity,
or as an entity, right?
Yes,
an entity, but not as a territory, which of course is the word that Israel uses to describe the West Bank. It's people refer to it as a territory, an occupied territory.
They kept using the phrase the situation in the state of Palestine, which really threw me. The situation, the whole overall, all of these requested arrest warrants are, the whole situation is in the situation in the state of Palestine. So, I mean, I think this guy Khan, the prosecutor, I think maybe he thinks he's still he's part of the British mandate or mandate authority or something like that, because that's how people have taken to talking about the situation in the state of Palestine. They basically, now everybody describes it as everybody on the left and abroad describes it as though everything is disputed. This is what the language games are trying to get across, that it's like it's frozen, it's paused at the end of the mandate. It's like, as the clock hits midnight, it freezes everything, and we're still debating what is going to become of this territory. And that's why the language, that's why they use these sorts of language, because they want to refer to the whole place as Palestine. And then maybe there's a state in there, maybe there's not a state in there, but it's basically their sort of shorthand is this place that was known as Palestine, and assuming that that's how everybody talks about it. And so when you ask like people on college campuses, they don't know they don't know what actually happened, or where the divisions are, or what's being what either side is asking for. They're sort of inculcated into this way of thinking that there's this slab of land in the Levant, and it's called Palestine, and they're fighting over it. And so we're back 76 years ago.
The thing about the ICC, what it reminds me of is there was it's like an Our Gang court. There was like an Our Gang Little Rascals episode, where like Spanky was the judge and like Alfalfa was the bailiff, like it was like the charm of the show was like the children pretending to do adult things, like they would start up businesses and they would start up court. That is like, that's like the ICC has absolutely no validity here, has no validity in Israel, but the press treats it like it is some sacred thing. And this is important because it's strange. Like, if it were a purely Mickey Mouse or Our Gang operation, which it is, but if it were recognized as such, it wouldn't make huge headlines. This body with no actual enforcement power goes and does this, and everyone acts as if it is some sort of divine judgment on the Jewish state. It is very weird.
But it had this perfect trifecta from a media standpoint, right? It has, oh, look, we can bash Israel again. It's good to bash Israel. We love to bash Israel. It had a celebrity connection because George Clooney's wife, Amal Clooney, was somehow involved in bringing these charges. And then it had, as you say, the kind of posturing international institution that seems legitimate and that the media likes to cite as some evidence, because I think this is a sort of classic liberal position of the idea that, our own corrupt, dumb Americans can't actually have real justice. We know about all the systemic problems in our justice system, but an international court, wow, they're just gonna bring their wisdom and experience to this. And John Bolton, for example, has long been a critic of these sorts of courts. Jack Goldsmith, lots of people in the legal realm have laid out in meticulous detail why the jurisdiction and the reach of these courts is bad, and why the danger of them, which is that domestically here you have law professors and sometimes kind of crazy judges citing things that the ICC does and things that the UN does as justification for their own judgments here in our own rule of law.
The Trump administration had sanctioned members of the ICC.
That's right.
Biden rolled those sanctions back.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great the punishment, the sanction. I'm reading this off of Reuters. The sanction for not arresting someone, if they have a warrant out for their arrest and they appear on your territory, the sanction for not arresting someone is a referral back to the ICC's Assembly of Member States.
It's a very angry letter. They're going to give you a really angry letter.
So this court, right, is as such as it is just it's just a circle. The court hands out warrants and rulings, and if you don't comply with the rulings, it goes back to a hearing at the same court, and then that same court will likely do something to suggest sanctions on you. And when the 124 member states of the ICC don't then sanction you, then you will be brought before the ICC member, whatever, referral back to the ICC's Assembly of Member States. I mean, that's literally everything this court does just leads back to the court itself. It's the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard. There's not even forget about an enforcement arm. There's not even like something that doesn't involve the ICC itself. It's just the ICC gets back together and they get back on camera.
Look,
and they wag their finger.
Yes. Okay. So what we have here, if we take the UN, bowing in grief and sorrow at the death of the president of a mass murdering regime that torments its own people and wishes to eliminate the sole refuge state for the Jewish people on the face of the earth, and you combine it with with the International Criminal Court, we are reminded yet again of the fact that international institutions, or so-called third way international institutions, exist really in the modern sphere for one thing and one thing only, which is that they are designed to hamstring nations that behave in and act in concert with the best moral traditions of the West, in favor of giving free rein to non-Western actors who will do whatever they want to do in whatever way they want to do it, on the grounds that the Western institutions are unfair and unjust in their very being, and therefore they get free shots whenever they want them in whatever way that they want them. Our participation in this international zoo, which has now gone on for decades and is, of course, far more pronounced in Democratic than in Republican administrations, has to be seen for what it is, which is just a gussied up form of the war on the West, by turning the West's own best beliefs against it and saying, you gotta do X, Y, and Z, or we're going to condemn you and trash you. But Iran certainly doesn't have to be held to these standards. Syria doesn't have to be held to these standards. China doesn't have to be held to these standards. China's committing a partial genocide right now as we speak. Syria killed 600,000 Muslims of its own people over the course of the last 7 years, and created a refugee crisis where, millions of people fled on boats. You can go state by state, country after country, which has no international criminal court sanction against it. The UN too, right? Half of the acts of the General Assembly of the United Nations, which represents 194 or 202 countries or something like that, half of its resolutions involve Israel. Half. A country of 9 million people on a planet with 7 billion people, and half of its actions involve this one country. International law is a scam. It's a farce. These international institutions are scams and farces. This was this idea, a kind of weird, unbelievably naive idea that we would bring enlightenment to the rest of the world by allowing them to participate in liberal institutions and give them parity with us as we were building this better world together. And instead, those institutions are simply turned as weaponry against
and they use
the United States and its allies.
And China, for example, uses these institutions now as cover for its own behavior. I mean, the ICC has done nothing to deal with China, same with the UN. And so I think it's worse than it's just that we're granting them parity. It's that they actually use it as a lever, and they use it as, and particularly when it comes to how money is dispersed, they use it as a way to pursue their own goals.
I mean, of course, and we have this.
My favorite tweet about this, which is just Mark McKinnon tweeted this today. He is the senior international correspondent for the Globe and Mail. So everybody knows that Canada is going through a bit of a moment right now. So he tweets in response to Barack Ravid tweeting that Biden criticized the request for arrest warrants. So Mark McKinnon writes, predictable from the U.S. Will be interesting to see reaction from Canada and other countries that actually support the ICC. And then the next sentence is the best one. Can Karim Khan really be cheered when he charges Putin, but labeled outrageous when he lays out his cases against Netanyahu and Gallant? Yes. Like, what kind of question is that? Can he be cheered when he charges Putin, but labeled outrageous when he charges Netanyahu? Yes. That's sometimes you arrest people you shouldn't arrest. Like, the whole idea, this has gone beyond.
He doesn't even have the right to arrest anybody.
No, but like the whole idea of like, Mark McKinnon, you don't think that sometimes prosecutors charge people who deserve to be charged, and sometimes they don't charge?
Seth. You are such a hypocrite. Don't you understand?
How did the ICC become
it's just you. We can't deal with your hypocrisy.
It's an even higher level. You can't question it. It's infallible. The ICC. It's not just a prosecutor. Normally, people on the left would recognize the overstepping that prosecutors routinely do. That's all I'm saying.
He's not even a prosecutor. That's the whole point.
No,
I mean, he's not a prosecutor. It's not a court. We don't recognize it. Israel doesn't recognize it. It has no standing. It has no charge. It has nothing. This is all nonsense. And now, yes, can we
talk about Biden here a little bit?
I want to before. Yeah, please go ahead.
Well,
because I have somebody else I need to talk about who is not Biden, but go ahead.
Well, he made the administration came out strongly against it, and he called it outrageous or something along those lines. Fine, good, well, but what did he think? He knows that they're carrying on this little rascal's tribunal against Israel the whole time that he and Antony Blinken are screaming about how Israel isn't doing enough for civilians. He knows that's going on while Biden has undone the sanctions on the ICC. I mean, there's a certain amount of didn't he sort of lay the groundwork for all this now? I mean.
Well, that's why I say the Democratic Party's relationship to these institutions is insanely self-defeating, because they love to cite them when they're out of power, because they like to use them against the idea that the Republicans who are in power are lawless and they're behaving in ways internationally that are shaming the United States. And of course, they don't want to be held liable for their behavior at the same time. And of course, this is not holding America liable, but the very Mark McKinnon tweet that you mentioned, Seth, says, "Oh, it's typical of Biden to defend Israel instead of defending the ICC." So that's where I say, doesn't he get it? Like, you think you're going to get credit? You think these people give you credit for your hands? Everything that we've been talking about Biden and saying, he's sort of turned to effectively a kind of enemy of the Israeli war effort because he is now actively attempting to stop its completion, right? But that is not how the world of people who elected Biden or who sort of swim in his orbit or swim in sort of the internationalist Democratic Party globalist orbit think about this. They think that he is some kind of a cat's paw for Bibi and Israel. So he's not getting credit for them. He attacks the ICC, which he has to, by the way, because if they get soft on the ICC, you think the ICC in October couldn't indict Biden for doing something or other somewhere just to show that it has the muscle to do so? Who the hell knows? Like, this is their disease. We could talk about what the Republican equivalent is, and there are equivalents, mostly domestic, but this is a democratic disease that it is propping up and supporting in general moral terms, a world in which a world of institutions that are actively hostile to the United States and really to Western democracies in general. But since so many of them are filled, the jobs are filled by former officials of other Western democracies, it may not seem quite the same. I now have to bring up somebody who must be who needs to be named and shamed, and about whom people of goodwill need to know and start acting. The person I'm referring to is Dov Waxman. Dov Waxman is a professor at UCLA. He is the Rosalind and Arthur Gilbert Foundation Chair of Israel Studies and the director of the UCLA YNS Nazarian Center for Israel Studies at UCLA. Dov Waxman is clearly not a Gentile based on his name. And the Nazarian Foundation, which is the largest supporter of his work, was founded by an Iranian family that fled Iran because of anti-Semitism and the rise of the Ayatollahs. Made a huge fortune in America, and now actually has been doing a lot of work after October 7th, funding and working good offices to help support American Jews, particularly on college campuses, except, of course, for Dov Waxman. And why do I say except for Dov Waxman, who runs this program? I will now read Dov Waxman's tweet today. Remember, he is the head of the Jewish Studies Department at UCLA. I welcome the ICC prosecutor's request for arrest warrants for Hamas leader Sinwar Deif and Hania, and for Israel's PM Netanyahu and Defense Minister Gallant. Hamas leaders should be held accountable for the war crimes and crimes against humanity. Netanyahu and Gallant should be held accountable for the war crime and crime against humanity of starvation of civilians as a method of war during Israel's war in Gaza. There is, at the very least, reasonable grounds to believe that they have committed such a crime. This is not about drawing a moral equivalence between Hamas and Israel. It is about upholding international law and holding decision makers accountable. This is a blood libel. Israel is not deliberately starving Gaza. Yesterday, 377 trucks of food aid went into Gaza. It is Gazans, it is Hamas that attacks food trucks going into Gaza. This is literally an accusation that the Jewish state is attempting to murder non-Jews using food as a weapon. Dov Waxman should not have this job. The Gilbert Foundation, that if this is not money that has been sort of laid in giant amounts, the Gilbert Foundation and the Nazarian Foundation needs to defund Dov Waxman's chair and his center. They are funding a blood libel. He is a disgusting, filthy, rotten, horrible person. He is a traitor to his own people. He is a traitor to truth. He is a traitor to academic honesty, and he is a cat's paw of terrorism. Moral equivalency between, he says literally that he is not drawing a moral equivalence, that he is drawing in the very same sentence that he said he is not drawing it, and something needs to be done. He has academic freedom. He can say whatever he wants. What he doesn't have the right to is the management and administration of millions of dollars of private foundation money being given by people who I believe are horrified, or should be horrified, but I think are horrified by the sentiment that he has expressed today. And if you know anybody who is involved in either of these foundations, the Gilbert Foundation or the Nazarian Foundation, you should certainly contact them today or tomorrow. let them know, send them emails, send Dov Waxman emails. He's very easily reached. You can find his bio. If you criticize him, he'll block you on Twitter, but that's fine. Send him an email anyway, and let's see what happens, because this sort of behavior is what he is what Eli Lake revealed in the recent issue of Commentary to be a Jew in the manner of Pfefferkorn. And I commend to you Eli's article, the brief history of the As a Jew, in I believe the March issue. Who knows? Eli Lake, the brief history of As a Jew. You want to know who Pfefferkorn is, and then
Sounds
you want to take a Pfefferkorn and put Dov Waxman's name in where Pfefferkorn is, and that's who this guy is. And I rarely, if ever, have done this on this podcast, like commended to you a campaign of letter writing, texting, and activism. But this cannot stand. It cannot stand that somebody who is running the Jewish Studies program at a major university, a state university, by the way, should act this way without consequence. Okay, so
it's funny. It's funny. I'm just going to add two quick things. It's just funny that you mentioned the As a Jew, because he had a viral tweet, Waxman did, during the encampments, during the protests, where he was objecting to some of the anti-Semitism from organizers, and he first went on this like 2 or 3 paragraph caveat where he's like talking about how great the encampments are and how great the how the students, their hearts are in the right place and the protests are right, and I oppose the same things they do. And he does use the phrase "as a Jew." So that's the first thing, is that you mentioned, if you want to know, as a Jew, he literally says in this tweet, "As a Jew, I do not personally feel threatened or because protest encampment at UCLA." So we have the literal "as Jew." The other thing that I would note is that, as he mentions in that particular tweet, one of the demands of the UCLA encampment was, of course, that the university sever all ties with the Nazarian Center, which he directs. So there is, he says
so
in the tweet at some point, he says, obviously I'm against that. He goes, obviously I oppose defunding the Nazarian Center, which I direct. But as a Jew, blah, blah, blah.
All right. So we will move on from him to some more stuff about Biden. There was an interesting little outbreak of fighting in the world of the Never Trump Chichikovs and cash grabbers and lunatics about the whole notion of supporting the idea that Donald Trump has frontal lobe dementia. You can see it; it's a public thing. You can absolutely see it on him. He has frontal lobe dementia because I guess he said that if he weren't in the courtroom, he would be in Iowa and New Hampshire. And of course, he's already won Iowa and New Hampshire. So why was he saying that? He has frontal lobe dementia. And anyone who says he doesn't is just like a whore who supports Trump and all that. So I couldn't let this stand alone. So I needed to cite 2 things that happened today with Joe Biden. Abe, would you care to remind us what Joe Biden believed he was doing when COVID broke out in 2019, early 2020?
Well, he was faithfully serving the president, Barack Obama, Barack, as he likes to tell the crowd, and Barack had said to him, according to Biden, the minority neighborhoods aren't faring so well. Joe, go in there and do something about it.
Okay, just
by gum, he
just
did.
to put a bow on this.
By gum.
In case you haven't connected the dots, Joe Biden Donald Trump was the president of the United States when COVID broke out. And unless Joe Biden knew that there was gain of function research going on in Wuhan in 2015 and that they were holding back the COVID virus for 4 years until it could be released.
I want to do a callback though, because this is why they don't want to release the recording of that transcript when he was deposed. Like, this is why they don't want the recording released, because I think actually that prosecutor was soft pedaling just how bad it was, just how much his confusion was, because that was not the only. There were several errors in his recent conversation, like the fact that he believes an American hostage who is still being held by Hamas was there in the room tonight with us. Everybody, come see Hirsch Goldberg Poland.
Yeah, he did one of those. Hirsch Goldberg Poland is here.
Yeah, like, but we should say that
I so devoutly wish that Hirsch Goldberg Poland were there. There is no person of goodwill on earth that does not wish that Hirsch Goldberg Poland was in that room. Unfortunately, Hirsch Goldberg Poland is somewhere in Rafah in a tunnel, along with we don't know how many surviving hostages there are living a nightmarish life in a nightmarish world.
At least he finally said his name.
To free him. Yeah, but Joe Biden just happened to free him magically with his brain, with his magical, wonderful brain. That, yes, Robert Hur, the prosecutor who declined to prosecute him for his mishandling of classified information, said that the reason was it was prosecutorial discretion, really, because he kind of did it, but that a jury would look at him and see him as, quote, a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. And so we are, of course, not getting the audio of that interview, though we have the transcript of the interview. Somehow, by the way, the transcript is not privileged, but the audio is privileged, according to the White House. And that is because I think if we heard it, basically all hell would break loose, which is another reason to wonder at what they actually expect is going to happen during the debate. I'm again awash. This is two things today, where he said he was vice president during COVID and that somebody who is being held captive in a nightmarish netherworld is here with us today. He's got 6 weeks until 5 weeks until the debate with Trump, should that debate go on. That's going to be 90 minutes to 2 hours of him unmolested. Like, there's only so much programming you can do.
I just think we should contextualize this. Joe Biden said this before an NAACP crowd in Michigan, and what he actually said regarding the thing with how he was vice president during COVID was that Barack Obama had noticed that Detroit wasn't faring well, and as Joe Biden likes to call him, in front of certain crowds, Barack said, "Joe, go to Detroit to fix COVID in Detroit." During the Obama years,
this is COVID. Maybe he was sending him to catch COVID in Detroit.
Yeah.
Well, and then they corrected the transcript to say, actually, he meant to say recession. So I just wonder who has that job, who has the job to go through the transcript and correct it. And that's, I think, why we don't have the audio, because I think the transcript and the audio of that deposition will not match. That's my theory as to why they don't want to release the audio. There's a lot of corrections that go on in the official transcripts that come from what comes out of Joe Biden's mouth that we sometimes get snippets of versus what you see in the official record. It's going to really annoy historians down the line. Let's hope that they keep those video clips handy.
This is May 21st. It's actually May 20th, but it's May 21st. Just to go back to our date confusion here as we are doing this too early. Anyway, which means that there is 5.5 months until Election Day. There's 5.5 months till Election Day. And the Trump, as I say, the sort of Trump Chichikovs want everybody to think that Trump has frontal lobe dementia. I don't think this is a good argument to be making. I don't think that raising the prospect of a presidential candidate with dementia, thus entering the dementia matter into the completely open public conversation, is a wise move for somebody who wants Joe Biden to be reelected president, because we all know that something is going wrong in that guy's brain.
Well,
now,
can I
could
point?
be normal age.
No. I think there's something else going on, though, too,
Okay.
which is that this is the first time in recent memory that he's had a full weekend as a candidate or as president. Usually he hangs out at the beach. This weekend they had him bouncing all around trying to court the African American vote, and his schedule was, for him, jam-packed. For a normal human being, it was, kind of a light week. But he didn't get his rest time. He didn't get his downtime. And he usually gets a solid 3 days of downtime for every week of work. So
Christine is such a scholar of his schedule.
I'm obsessed with the schedule because they won't list who visits him. They claim he's working at the beach, but they won't give us a public list of who visits him at the beach. It's driving me mad. But yes, I think that the stamina that is assumed about him on the Democratic side, which is now really quite a lot of wishful thinking, he's got 5.5 months. Is he going to be able to maintain even a schedule that's this light? This is still a light schedule for someone running for re-election for president.
It is also important to note that it's no joke to prepare for a debate. And let's just be honest about this debate. This is an election about lack of enthusiasm right now. Like which candidate will suffer from the lack of enthusiasm problem worse than the other one, and whoever the one is that suffers worse from it is probably going to lose, and the one who isn't quite as bad on the lack of enthusiasm front will probably squeak his way in. Okay? But Trump hasn't said much because of the trial, and Biden looks like he's senile. So, in the understanding that in the annals of both reality television, American politics, world leadership, and the like, and CNN's decision to allow all broadcast networks and any other network that wishes to simulcast the debate, I think we can presume that this debate is going to have a massive audience. A massive audience of a sort that almost nothing outside of an NFL playoff game gets. I'm talking 60, 50, 70, 80 million people, very possibly at least for some aspect of it. You have to be prepared for debates. The classic way that someone is prepared for a debate is that briefing books are created and they study the briefing books, or they have to be ready for 50, 60, 70, 80 different questions, unless, of course, you're Barack Obama and you supply the questions that Candy Crowley reads to you beforehand.
Much more efficient. Much more efficient,
yes. And that did happen, and it happened, and CNN knows it happened, and Barack Obama knows it happened. That's why he said, go look at the transcript, Candy, that I handed you beforehand so that you can quote something back to Mitt Romney that I told you to quote back to him beforehand. Not that we're, maybe that'll happen with Biden, so he'll have some leg up on Trump. But Biden's got to study for this debate. He has to study, and he has to know 70 different things or be prepared in 70 different. That's how it's done. And stamina, he's going to need stamina. That's not public. It's not whatever. It's going to be sessions, debate brief sessions, which take hours and hours a day over a week or 2 weeks or something like that. And when you've watched it, when somebody is really well briefed and is on top of his game and when somebody isn't. So Mitt Romney was briefed to a fairly well, knew exactly what he was doing. First debate with Obama. Obama thought he could skate in his incredibly arrogant way and was walloped, as few people have ever been walloped before in a debate. And then Obama went and said, okay, this second debate, I better be really prepared. Also, I better set up Candy Crowley with the questions that she's going to ask me, and let's get that done. Biden doesn't have it in him to prepare for this debate. What he is able to do when he rises to occasions is read things off teleprompters.
Well, or go to personal or go to personal stories. That used to be his fallback, and even that is not working any longer because of the time lapse problem that he has now in telling those stories, many of which are false, of course, and provably false. But that time, the fact that he can't remember that when he was vice president and that the dates are not coinciding with the major global events is worrisome. Quite worrisome.
It is very worrisome, and he can't prepare, in my view, or it will be very difficult for him to prepare. And Trump is a horse of a different color, and Trump can, of course, muddy and make himself look bad and make himself look like a jerk and all of that, and he probably will. But what Biden is and what he has been and where he is going, it's scary. I would be very, if I were Professor Dr. Biden, Jill Biden, I would be very concerned because I could imagine him holding it together for 15 minutes. But I don't know that he can hold it together for an hour and a half or 2 hours. I don't think they.
How long was the State of the Union? How long was that?
Was 68 minutes
with teleprompter.
It was on a teleprompter.
It's a teleprompter, right? No, I'm just curious in terms of like physical stamina.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does he have to know about 70 different things though, going up against Trump? I'm not just making like a classic Trump joke. I'm saying, are they going to talk about anything? Are they going to talk about that many things of substance in it, or is it going to be so easily derailed that it's not actually going to be a policy debate, and therefore Biden doesn't have to prepare in the traditional manner? He doesn't have to know, Mitt Romney and Barack Obama both had to know, they had to be ready to be president. Our expectations for our presidents since Mitt Romney and Barack Obama,
fair enough.
We've lowered them slightly.
Fair enough. But he has to have things in his back pocket to say. He has to be prepared. He has to have blocks of things to say. They're going to say, you need to go after Trump for this, and you're going to want to do that. And here's the killer line that you got to memorize, that you got to deliver in the first 12 minutes so that it can be made into a TikTok by 9:12 p.m. And we will line it up so the algorithm makes it go viral. That's what you have to say the second time you speak, and this and that. And he's going to have to hold all of this stuff in his head, even if it's not policy driven, just if it's sound bites or whatever. He's got to talk for an hour and a half.
Undoubtedly, to my mind, the idea for Biden here is going to be that he's got to go on the offensive, because clearly his camp and himself, he thinks that when he is attacking and barking and yelling, he is showing signs of life and of competence, and it's a good way to hopefully, from Biden's perspective, hopefully get under Trump's skin, because Trump will very likely fall into a sort of defensive posture at that point. But that's not easy when you're not looking at a teleprompter.
Look, we could all be wrong. He rises to the occasion, blah, blah, blah. Even if he does badly, he's got 5 months to recover and all of that. But the thing that I'm suggesting is that he is in a situation from which he cannot recover, because the problem is cognitive, and he's in decline. And sure, people rally, like they get put on the right blood pressure medication. It turns out they were on the wrong blood pressure medication, and their minds clear up or something like that. It's not that you can't reverse a decline if there is a medical cause of the decline. Maybe something is being misdiagnosed or misrepresented. We're told that is not the case with him. They deny anything is wrong with him. We know there's something wrong with him. Common sense tells you there's something wrong with him. And so if he has a bad showing, the point is that it will reinforce, just as the bad showing at the State of the Union would have been the moment at which the entire Democratic Party would have started, jumping out of windows like it was 1929, the stock market crash, and they were spared. They got climbed down off the ledge because he did okay. that's the best they can hope for, in my view. And I just think that there are these little bits and pieces of evidence, like
his own staff sent the Easter Bunny to take him away from the public on the White House grounds a year ago because he was off the cuff starting to riff. Like, we've gone past sanity here. I mean, I'm sorry.
No, why are you sorry?
That was also very clearly the Secretary of State in the bunny costume too. Right. You can't just leave that to anybody. What are you going to tell an intern?
Yeah. Right. You also know because he was playing the guitar in Kyiv, and so that was that was really great. All right, so finally, we need to talk a little about what happened on Tuesday. How's that? Talk about on Tuesday in the Manhattan courtroom of Judge Merchan in the Alvin Bragg Stormy Daniels case. Judge Merchan lost.
Except it happened on Monday.
Monday.
Wait, what is today? Monday?
We need to talk on Tuesday.
I'm sorry, I don't even know what day it is. Okay, it's Monday. It happened on Monday. So it happened yesterday when you're listening. And it happened on Monday. I'm sorry. And I'm not running for president, so it's okay that I'm getting my dates confused. All right, you are free to turn to.
When were you vice president, though, John?
Thank you. You're free to unsubscribe. I'm not running the free world. Make up your mind as you wish. Okay, so on Monday, in any normal case involving a single witness, really, who is corroborating the case that the prosecutor is making, if that witness were Michael Cohen, and what happened today in the defense redirect of Michael Cohen happened, the judge would probably move, the defense would move for summary dismissal, and the judge would grant the summary dismissal. Michael Cohen today said he stole money from the Trump organization because he thought he was being screwed and he deserved it. He stole money. He stole. There was some third party person who was supposed to rig a phone and poll because Trump didn't like how he was doing in the poll. And he charged the company twice as much as Trump was paid. And then he told Trump, the Trump organizer, the campaign, that the company wanted $50,000. The company only wanted $20,000. He pocketed the other $30,000. So he stole that money. And then he acknowledged that he had lied to the congressional committee that he had testified before in the famous explosive testimony of whatever the hell year that was, and that he wants a book deal. He wants a TV show. He's angry at Trump. He would like Trump to be destroyed. He's on tape saying he would like Trump to be destroyed. And his own lawyer that he contacted when he was worried said that he wanted Trump to be destroyed. So not a good witness, I think, since the entire case hinges on his testimony. And then the defense called that lawyer, Costello, who he had contacted looking for help in the depths of his despair. And Costello, there was a whole argument about whether or not Costello should be allowed to testify. Can't really understand why he would not be allowed to testify. And finally, Judge Merchan allowed him to testify. And then rather than listening to what Costello was saying, which was that he was corroborating everything bad about what Cohen was up to, Judge Merchan decided that Costello was giving him the stink eye.
Well, there were a lot of no, but this is great. And as parents of teenagers, John and I have special insight into side eye, I think. But the judge was really sustaining a lot of the objections in a way that must have been frustrating for the defense lawyer, but was also obviously frustrating to Costello, who finally said, "Geez," and then side-eyed the judge, and that was too much for the judge. So the judge, who clearly has very thin skin, They cleared the courtroom. Yeah. He was chastised, no more.
Which the judge said, "You don't say geez in my court."
Yeah, you don't say G's in my courtroom. You're giving me side eye. And then he cleared the courtroom. And then he said, if you keep looking at me that way, your entire testimony is going to be stricken. Now, let's just talk about this for a minute. Like, so the judge is offended by the behavior of the guy on the stand. So because it's like he's going to get thrown out of the game. He's out of the game.
You're out of order, and you're out of order. Yeah.
And hello, reversible error. Like the guy is on the stand, totally. You don't like his behavior, but you're not impeaching his testimony for any reason other than he's giving you the stink eye. It was a horrible day for the prosecution. It was a horrible, horrible, horrible day for the prosecution. The only way, in my view, after this day, not that I was in the courtroom, but I spoke to a couple of people who were in the like overflow courtroom and stuff like that. Like it was insane. And I, again, reading between the lines of the lunatic anti-Trump bar people, they're suddenly very, very eager to bait Trump into testifying tomorrow rather than having the defense rest. They're like, oh, are you chicken? You're chicken. He's got to testify. Oh, what are you chicken? Because they think the case just blew up. Now, that doesn't mean that Trump won't get convicted, by the way, because he could. It's 12 people, New York, who the hell knows? And I don't think that he's going to get acquitted, though he could get acquitted. I think the jury will hang based on what I'm seeing, unless Merchan's jury instructions simply say things like, you must disregard everything that Michael Cohen and lawyer Costello said and accept everything that the prosecution is alleging, even though they won't even tell you what the underlying felony was or the second crime that makes these misdemeanor cases into a felony. Or conversely, we're reading that maybe the judge will instruct the jury that they can convict Trump on misdemeanor charges, dropping the felony and just saying, do you think that Trump falsified these documents, or was involved in the falsification of these documents? And thus, Bragg could claim that he had secured guilty verdicts in misdemeanor cases, which would be quite rich since Bragg doesn't prosecute misdemeanor cases in New York City against people who actually commit crimes.
This is a non-violent crime, so it's fine to prosecute those.
So it's fine to prosecute that.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, that's no problem.
Okay, so that's my rant here. Please,
the thing that I couldn't stop thinking about was last month there was this wonderful scene where the Yankees manager, Aaron Boone. I'm a Yankees fan, so I say wonderful scene just because the whole thing was so funny. The Yankees manager, Aaron Boone, was ejected from the game in the top of the first inning because a fan behind him said something to the umpire, and the umpire thought it was Aaron Boone, the manager of the New York Yankees, and he tossed them. And they had this conversation. They were all mic'd up, and they had this conversation where Boone is just explaining to him, I didn't say anything. I mean, it's that guy right there. You see him? He's sitting behind me in the stand. This, as an aside, you have to be able to tell the difference, right? Because this could happen all the time, you'd think. But anyway, Boone says, I didn't say anything. The umpire says to him, I don't care who said it. You're gone. And then Boone says, what do you mean you don't care? I didn't say. What do you mean you don't care? I don't care who said it. You're gone. What the transcript of the objections and the threats and the you don't say G's in my courtroom and I'll strike your testimony from the record if you say G's in my courtroom and stuff like that reminded me very much of that. It's this sort of farcical situation where it was like it wasn't me, it was the guy. I don't care. And this judge kind of does this sort of thing where it's like you can't actually do that. I don't care. Yeah. You're gone. I don't care. You're gone.
You know what it's like?
Just responds to everything.
Okay.
I don't care. You're gone.
Go.
No, I just, John, I agree with you. Not only was this terrible for the prosecution, but Michael Cohen, more generally now, has proven to be really terrible, maybe perilous branding for the anti-Trump movement. Because they wrapped their arms around him. He became the face of the guy who was going to expose Donald Trump, and this is what he is, and this is where he is, and he looks just terrible. Beyond the trial, he's managed to drag down the larger effort, I think, in the public eye.
I was just thinking of an analogy. You drew the Aaron Boone analogy because I have another baseball analogy, but it's fictional. It's the moment in The Naked Gun when Leslie Nielsen takes the place of the umpire at the final game, and he throws the other umpire out of the game. First, he throws out the pitcher, then he throws out the batter, then the umpire, the third base umpire, comes over and says, "You can't do that." He didn't. And he goes, "You're out of here!" Like he could throw an umpire out now. So you're going to throw out an entire testimony on the basis of a guy's side eye. Everything has gone haywire. Now, I understand judges go ballistic, as somebody who has done 1,000 trials told me. Like, judges want to be in control of their courtroom, and they do not like it when people on the stand are disrespectful toward them, because it is like a classic leadership problem. He needs the jury to believe that he is in command of the facts and of the matter and the case, so that he can instruct them properly, and they will listen to his instructions and not nullify and not do whatever the hell it is that they want to do. So this is a very serious thing for a judge. He thought Costello was misbehaving, and we know what he said to Costello when the courtroom was cleared after the fact, because they released the transcript. We read about it. But so we can give him some credit for saying, you are disturbing sort of the good working order of my courtroom. I cannot allow that to happen. You better stop. But it's the nature of the way that he did it, and the fact that clearly the trial itself is getting to him, and that despite the fact that he has done nothing but try to tee up the prosecution for a victory, things seem to be going in the wrong direction, that he is, looking in the face of a humiliation. And one last question to ask you guys. So let's just say that this doesn't go the way that the anti-Trump bar wants, and that either the jury hangs or Trump is acquitted, which would be just like jaw-dropping, but it doesn't go the way they want. And they're faced with the fact that the two cases brought by the special prosecutor, Jack Smith, January 6th case and the classified documents case, cannot get to trial before November. And there's been a lot of efforts to blame the judge in Florida, though that's preposterous, because the judge in Florida was working in part on a schedule that was designed by Jack Smith, and he was pursuing matters that had to go through intelligence clearance procedures that she had to respect. And he was doing two things at once by prosecuting both cases at once. At what point, if this happens, does the anti-Trump bar and the despairing Democrats and everything, do they turn on Jack Smith the way they turned on Robert Mueller? Because remember, Robert Mueller, there were action figures of Robert Mueller, and there was this whole, he was a war hero. You better not say, Robert Mueller, you better not say anything about him. He's the greatest human being who has ever lived. I mean, he may not be the risen Christ, but he's pretty close. And then Robert Mueller says, I'm not going to prosecute him. And then Robert Mueller is senile and stupid and a monster, and he's corrupt and he's terrible and he's horrible. I don't see how Jack Smith survives, weirdly enough, an Alvin Bragg failure here, because he's their last hope. All they want is to have Trump as a felon. That's what they want. I don't think it's going to help them, but they're hanging so much on this, despite now almost 9 months of evidence that they really shouldn't be hanging it on this. They're not going to get that much help from it. There was one poll in January that suggested that there'd be a 20% drop in Trump's poll averages if he were convicted of a felony. And I'm sure his numbers will drop, but it's not going to be sufficient unto the day. So Jack Smith, next villain.
I think it's going to be hard to preemptively turn him into a villain, because the public hasn't really seen him in action enough for them to be persuaded one way or the other. I think he's already perceived as a villain among the group you've described, but it's really tough for them, right? They're the rule of law. They're the ones who uphold standards. They're the ones who respect the Constitution. If they start trashing Smith now, that kind of gives the lie to the whole enterprise. Not that.
Yeah. Plus, I think the villain for them is the blindness and the corruption of America. That's who's to blame. That the people who can't see the truth. That's who it is. That's also the victim of that's also the villain in the story of why Biden isn't doing as well as he should be doing. Because no matter what, people just don't see what a great job he's doing, and similarly, people just don't see how obvious Trump's crimes are. I think that's the much easier to go to.
I think he might be actually villainized, because I think of Merrick Garland, who was who the left, especially that group, did complain about loudly and for a long time, because he wasn't doing anything. So I actually do think that there's some precedent for them to throw somebody under the bus because, hey, nothing has happened. The clock has run out, that sort of thing. For a long time, there was this impatience with Merrick Garland. It's like anybody else would have brought this, and Merrick Garland is slow walking this, and Merrick Garland this, and it was all like nothing has happened yet. And so I do think that I think that they get really impatient, and I think that they don't really care about procedure. So I think that there's a real chance that he'll get the Merrick Garland treatment, which, Garland can turn it around, but once Jack Smith, once his clock runs out on him, he can't. So I think the impatience is actually something that they do get really kind of rowdy about.
Let me just put two data points in favor of my argument. Okay, one is Robert Hur, special prosecutor in the Biden classified documents case, issued a statement saying he was declining to prosecute Biden, letting Biden off. And then he said, I have to give you a reason. Reason is that even if I thought that this was a prosecutable offense, which it may be, I haven't quite made up my mind yet. Jury's going to let him off because he's an old senile man, basically, with a poor memory. And so prosecutorial discretion says to me, I'm not going to pursue this any further. He's not the right witness to prosecute. And Robert Hur's name is now mud. He did what they wanted. He said, I'm not prosecuting Biden, even though it was self-evident that Biden had done pretty much what Trump had done, except that his lawyers had called to say that he'd done it, and he hadn't moved the documents around his house the way Trump moved the documents around Mar-a-Lago. I think Trump is guilty, by the way, so I'm in no way whitewashing this at all, and I think Trump, should be convicted of that crime, though I assume if he wins the presidency, he'll pardon himself, and that'll all go away. But so Robert Hur got it. And let's also remember Fani Willis. So Fani Willis indicted Trump on, 275,000 charges relating to whatever the hell relating to election denial efforts and meanness, and he was so terrible. And she indicted him, and she indicted 19 other people, thus creating a case so complicated that it could never possibly be brought to trial before, even though she said she wanted it to, before the election. But people were like, she's great, she's tough, look, she's so. And then came the story about her and her boyfriend and how she threw $650,000 of the state's money at him to be her special counsel. And then there was that hearing at which she started saying things like, I always keep $5,000 in cash wherever I lay my head, because that's what my daddy told me to do. And you have to understand, people in the Black community keep money near their head. And that's what I did. So I only gave him money in cash. He never reimbursed me. Okay, whatever it was this astounding moment in recent American politics. And she is now, from what I can tell, in the witness protection program.
No, she's being interviewed. She's being interviewed on cable news still and stuff like that.
She is?
I think so. Yeah.
I literally have not seen her name in 8 weeks or something. Maybe I'm not watching the same things you're. I mean, she was going to be one of the great American figures, and obviously was setting herself up to run for higher office and all of that. And then came the where she put the money by her head testimony.
Well, she's also has to run for re-election. That's an elected position, so she's got to win an election.
So I think that they dropped her like a hot potato. They go after Robert Hur, who didn't prosecute Biden, but said something that was unhelpful to the Biden cause. The jury hangs in the Bragg case, and they're sitting there. The entire strategy of nailing Trump through lawfare is in tatters because Jack Smith brought 2 cases almost at once and couldn't figure out how to pursue either one of them in the proper manner to get it before a court. They're going to blame America? I mean, I guess they'll blame America, but I think you can also blame Jack Smith. What's more, they should blame Jack Smith. What about maybe they should blame Jack Smith?
I think, by the way, becoming the legal silver bullet to take down Trump is basically like getting chosen to give the State of the Union response now, or what we used to,
or being a Spinal Tap
Sports
drummer.
Illustrated, Spinal Tap drummer, Sports Illustrated cover curse, the Madden cover curse, because they all.
The Sports Illustrated cover is very good, or Best New Artist, Grammy Best New Artist.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very, or winning American Idol, which, by the way, seems to now be a career ender. For like 5 or 6 years, they actually made stars, and now the last thing you want to be if you actually want to have a full career as a person is winning American Idol. Okay, so Christine, please.
I'll make it brief.
To what commentary recommends.
Okay. Because we've kept our listeners for a long time today. I'm going to recommend that everyone watch season 3 of Hacks, which is a show on HBO Max. I would also recommend you watch seasons 1 and 2 first to understand it, but season 3 has really hit its stride. It's a comedy about a sort of aging stand-up comedian played brilliantly by Jean Smart. She is just wonderful in this role. I mean, I've always liked her, but she's incredible. And she hires a kind of cynical LA writer to help her with her act. And so now we're in the stage where she's made this big comeback. She's kind of hot again. And a year has passed between the last season and this one. And she's trying to figure out how to enjoy her success and how to build on it. And her young writing partner has started her own career, but they come back into each other's orbit. The young writer is played by Hannah Einbinder. She's also very good. The supporting cast is wonderful, but it's just a great example of the absolute hamster wheel of trying to maintain one's status and celebrity in that business. And it's both sort of horrifying and mesmerizing. It's hilariously funny. It is not for children. There's one of the episodes is a roast of the Deborah Vance character, and there's some salty language, but I'm really enjoying it. I have no idea if it has any basis in reality in terms of how Las Vegas or LA or Hollywood works in general, but it's just completely entertaining. So I recommend season 3 of Hacks.
Great. Okay. Well, we will be back. I don't know what day. I don't know what day it is now. I thought it was Thursday. Now we're talking. It's Monday. I thought it was Tuesday. Now you're listening on Tuesday, so I guess
we should sell those days of the week underwear so that as in our swag shop, so people will know.
Absolutely. Okay. Anyway, that's my problem, not your problem. Please enjoy. Forget the whole day confusion. Don't vote for me for president. And we'll be back tomorrow. So for Christine, Seth, and Abe, I'm John Podhoretz. Keep the candle burning.